Thanks everyone for being here. We have another round of talks with 3 great early stage VCs where we're gonna talk about how they work with founders, where they see opportunities in AI, and especially double click on the enterprise side of things. So maybe to kick it off, you can give me a little bit quick introduction of what you're doing, what you're focusing now, and what's the most exciting trend you have seen in AI that's already making an impact.
Me first?
Yes.
Fraser Anderson, managing director at Link Ventures, focused on early stage AI companies. I would say the thing that we really like is sort of 3 to 5 best friends, generally from a Boston area school, so a lot of MIT, a lot of Harvard CS, writing code themselves, and basically building any business which meets 2 criteria. One is, if you took AI out of the business plan, it wouldn't make sense. And 2 is, does Jensen Huang care that this business exists? And is this kind of bullish for NVIDIA? So I think it tends to eliminate a couple of dead ends for early stage teams. Also, I did have to take a picture of Franzer because that's the name that my wife calls me when I'm not measuring up to perfection. And I'm 3,000 miles away, so I don't know what I could have done.
Hi, everyone. My name is Patrick Salyer. I'm a partner at Mayfield. Mayfield is an early stage venture capital firm that invests in seed, Series A, Series B companies. I personally focus on AI applications. I previously was a Mayfield entrepreneur for about a decade before investing in the last 5 or 6 years. Something we're really excited about and spending a lot of time on is AI, what we call AI teammates, which is this idea that every persona role within a company will have someone that's going to help them do their job more effectively, gain superpowers. That's all being powered by agents. We're seeing this in the real world across like every single horizontal and vertical, and something we're investing quite a bit in.
Hey, I'm Jeremiah from Blitzscaling Ventures. Just curious, how many of you are founders? Raise your hands. Awesome, great. That's great. You're putting your career on the line in this exciting time. I'm also an early stage investor, and the thing that we're looking for at Blitzscaling, which is based upon that famous book, is companies with viral effects and network effects. Viral effects are like my first filter. If you don't have that, it's hard to move forward. So that means that the product naturally spreads on its own. There's product-led growth or open source, or there's a distribution strategy. You have a partner that pushes that into the market. Obviously, we look very closely at the founders, and then I'm also gauging if you have access to proprietary data, which even in the age of synthetic data is a moat of some form. So those are some of the things that I'm looking for.
Interesting. So all three of you spend time talking to hundreds of founders like every month. What are the founder type in AI that you are, mostly excited about now? You talked about, like, we're seeing a bunch of, successful AI startups like that, drop out from MIT, a 20-year-old, and build their first AI company and just took off. Is that what most of you are looking for? Is like repeat founders no longer in fashion now? What are you thinking?
Yeah, so I think we tend to get a little bit more excited about the kind of vibe coding native young founder building with their best friends. I think just that level of precocity tends to be very high signal for kind of future success. So we like that. So I think we're a little bit less, we're trying not to be too smart and spending too much time with people that like love multiplying matrices all the time. So that's kind of the thing that we tend to index on.
Yeah, I think for us, there's definitely no one size fits all, but I do think some of the same things that made great founders for like the last couple decades still make great founders in the AI era. We're looking for founders that have really unique insight and experience in some domain or knowledge that they're building in. We're looking for those that are commercially minded. They may not be go-to-market experts, but they can think about go-to-market. We're looking for completeness of team. Hopefully there's a team that complements one another. And we're looking for folks that want to build something like pretty bold and audacious, trying to do something irrationally large. And so kind of, I don't think it's changed that much, actually. And I think part of that is as AI evolves and there's an API for AI, essentially. LLMs have an API that any business can use, especially at the application layer. Not every company needs to have deep AI research. That might be counter than what some people believe. Maybe at different layers it's different, but we think that's kind of the era we're moving into right now.
I wouldn't say there's one thing that we're looking for specifically in any founder, but I am observing that the founders we bet on that are growing the fast, they're using AI agents like teammates So we invested in Crew AI, that's enterprise open source for agentic software, and they are in 60% of the Fortune 500. 60%. The company's only 20 months old. There's only 30 employees, but there's 300 AI teammates, agents. So it's a 10-to-1 ratio. Even HR, even the EA, even sales, non-technical people, they all use AI agents. They have to talk about it and show it off every week. That's part of the culture. So I'm looking for this agentic first type of behavior. Like I sent them data, like here's all the people coming to my event on Thursday. Who do you want me to set up meetings with? An hour later, they ran it through all their AI and they prioritized based on the business goals. And they said, this is the list. We reviewed it, human in the loop, execute on that. I'm like, okay. So that's what I'm looking for, that level of speed, 10x by agentic.
Sounds like you want to back AI founders who use AI to build their team and product.
Yes, definitely. And we're expecting these teams to be pretty small. I mean, there's this leaderboard here called the AI Native Leaderboard. I'm sure you guys have seen it, right? And these startups, the average startup on that leaderboard has 20 employees, and they are making over 5 million in revenue, and the revenue per employee is 1 to 3 million. By the way, the industry average is 200K for SaaS. They're doing 1 to 3 million because it's agentic first.
It's actually crucially important for young founders to be able to use agents, because especially if you're a 19-year-old founder, like when would you have gotten the experience to manage a team of 200 people? But if you have 170 agents, that's actually a lot more straightforward. You can still get that same level of operational leverage. I love that point.
Patrick, you have run a successful SaaS company before. How do you compare that experience of running a SaaS company and now advising a lot of AI founders? What are you seeing the differences and maybe similarities?
Yeah, well, the world's moving much faster now. So I think the speed and pace of iteration has never been more important, especially we're talking about 0 to 1 phase here in this talk. And if I'd say like the number one thing that correlates with success at the early stage is how quickly the founding teams are learning, right? And I think the playbooks have changed quite a bit. Like on go-to-market, as an example, back when I was a founder 6, 7, 8 years ago, SDRs, like sales development reps, were a huge thing. We actually had a team of 100 different SDRs, a team in Phoenix. That would be an absolute waste of money now. Like you just light money on fire if you did that. And instead, as an example, influencer marketing is incredibly important. A lot of the B2C techniques are working in enterprise. And I mean, that's just one example. So I think it's just like the rules are being rewritten right now. Teams have to move super quick. And whether it's harder or not, I don't know. It's just different is what I would say.
Does that change how you guys evaluate and underwrite early businesses as well? Like now I've heard more early stage VCs talking about revenue per head than they did before. And it's kind of such a matrix about efficiency and how you batting on the trajectory of the revenue growth.
It's really hard in pre-seed. They may not be generating revenue. So in our portfolio, I think only around 60% are revenue generating right now. And most of them are seed deals, so it's still not the mass majority. I don't think that's a good limiter at this time.
I would say what has probably changed for us, maybe at least relative to 6 years ago, is if we've got a strong relationship with the team and we like them and we trust them, we want to give them money just as soon as we can. Like, idea stage or even almost pre-idea, like kind of they've got a space they want to go into, we're happy to do that. But I would have said maybe 6 years ago we would have done pre-revenue deals with folks that we met through the network, were credible, had an idea that made sense, would kind of check out in diligence. Now I would say if we don't have that relationship, it's like, it's almost shame on you for not coming to me with revenue, given how fast you can build.
One thing I would just add, one playbook that has changed, maybe not in consumer, but within the enterprise, is the need to actually have a lot of services and forward deployed engineers. Like 10 years ago in SaaS, that was like services was a dirty word. You wanted everything to be self-service in the cloud, seat-based. And now what we're finding is that last 10% to get agents or AI to work is actually really challenging, really, really challenging. And so one way to get around that is you actually install resources within the company and help get that across the line. And that's a feature, not a bug. Palantir made that popular and is doing fantastically. And that's something where if you take entrepreneurs from 10 years, they have to rethink how they're thinking about things. And a lot of entrepreneurs earlier in their career, that's uncomfortable, right? Because they don't want to engage with customers. So that's where some of the old school professional services, people that have been at SAP or Oracle, may actually be really well set up in this world to succeed.
Curious how you think about that piece specifically with Gen AI. I mean, my own experience building agents for myself has been it's pretty hard still to zero shot these things. Like they're really, really good when you can give them feedback quickly. Right. Do you think like the sort of forward deployed thing gets more leverage because you have somebody who actually understands how the machine works and is right with the customer to kind of reprompt, or do you think that's like not really a causal relationship? It's just a better business model?
No, I think that's exactly causal, right? Because by the nature of being indeterministic, and if you apply agents are now talking to agents, which are talking to agents, which are talking to agents. So if you multiply, you have a 90% success rate times 90% times 90%, all of a sudden you have a 30% success rate. And this is especially the case when you take, if you try to build this stuff on your own, or you take a horizontal platform that's not designed for this specific use case, it's a disaster. So this idea that you can actually like embed, really deeply understand the customer, start to use not just LLMs, but actually maybe traditional machine learning or rule-based type approaches, suddenly you can make that, actually, you can go after that problem and actually accomplish it. Human in the loop's actually really important too. So another model that we're seeing is actually deliver a complete service instead of a technology. And this has been some of the fastest adopting verticals are these things that were previously outsourced to agencies. You can now create an AI version of that, go from 30% gross margins to 60, 70%. You provide the human in the loop as the service, and suddenly you can get to market 10x faster, and the customer knows how to buy that. They already outsource that. So it's happening within advertising agencies or solution integrators or call centers or tons of things like that, and that's a big opportunity right now.
The other thing I'm noticing in terms of the early stage founder playbook in AI is how they market and their startups and how they tell their stories. It's interesting to see more of the founders become a personal and a professional brand of their startups. And some of it helps with them about go-to-market or adapting customers. I'm curious to Jeremiah, giving your expertise, how do you think of that?
So I run a founder event several times per year called Llama Lounge. Has anybody been? You've heard of it? Okay, heard of it, Llama Lounge. And we have founders, we put them on stage and we want them to pitch for 60 seconds. That's it, it's your shot, like Eminem, like don't throw up mom's spaghetti, go. And basically they are telling their story, they're doing it on social media, and many of them are doing courses and classes as well, and they're hosting events, right? And they're, for example, one of the startups we bet on, Composio, they did like a history walk on Saturday to engage people. It was off, timing, right? This is not during the week. So being there and active in the community is a key thing. There's 200 AI in-person events in San Francisco Bay Area every month. For those that live here, who lives here? Okay, yeah, so you see it, you feel it. And there's usually 2 hackathons every weekend, each with 300 developers competing against each other. So just being there with the community, even though we're agentic, we're in the AI world, is critical that you need to be an ecosystem developer. I think that's the big trend that I see.
So what's your tip for people to be part of the ecosystem developer? Is it to be in-person events, not bring your AI, but bring your true self?
People want to be together when we use AI to automate the things we don't want to do in life. The fact that these AI founders are showing up to talk to each other when everything else can be automated is a sign that we want to be together. So you have to show up and or host.
The one thing I just say to build off this idea of personal brands is we're in a moment right now where everyone's trying to learn about AI, especially among mid-market enterprises if you're not in Silicon Valley, and even in individual roles. In most enterprise companies, you're selling to an individual role or in a vertical. And so the more that founders can actually teach, use their expertise within AI and actually train instead of sell, the more that I think that company will be successful, and especially using social to do this. So believe it or not, I'm seeing real enterprise companies use social influencing on TikTok, or on Instagram, because actually their customers are there, believe it or not. And it's very unnatural for some people like myself, but it's actually happening, and I think it's an important trend.
It's clear as day with our teams. The founders who are public facing are succeeding faster. I mean, some of the stuff that some of our younger entrepreneurs produce makes me extremely uncomfortable, but it's working. So,
as long as it's working, that's what you're underwriting. And that's a great segue to what you mentioned about how enterprises are buying the technology and where they're spending money. I remember when the ChatGPT wave started, every boardroom is having a conversation and want to spend their AI budget. 2 years in, how have you seen that conversation shifted, and how corporate and enterprises buying AI from, especially from the startups that you are backing, has changed at all?
Yeah, I'm happy to take that first. Okay, so first of all, if you're not selling AI, you're not selling. Like, no one's buying things that aren't AI right now. It's a hard message, but I get asked that all the time by entrepreneurs. So it has to be AI right now if you want to sell, because that's where the budgets are. The first wave of AI is let's chat, write, search my data. That's what everyone wanted to do. They went out and bought Glean, and Glean's been incredibly successful for that. Of course, they got enterprise versions of ChatGPT and all the sort of enabling protection security around that. We're now in the second version of that, like the second era, maybe even the third, which is agentic AI. It's actually accomplishing workflows. And the first sort of iteration of that is trying to build it yourself. And everyone probably saw this report coming out of, was it out of MIT? Maybe you can speak to that. We're disavowing the report. Okay, anyhow, the gist of the report was the DIY stuff didn't work very effectively. And there's been a lot of things that people have tried to build they weren't successful. I think we're moving into an era where it's going to be much more buy. It's going to be buying these AI teammates, agentic tools for very specific use cases within companies, but we'll see. But the budgets are there. There's been a lot of experimentation, and I still think we're in like the second inning.
I just to make one quick point, which you mentioned, I think about services revenue I do think a lot of founders that have came from kind of a hybrid services and software background do have an advantage selling to the enterprise because of the kind of issues with zero shot. Customer expectations are here, but it's hard to deliver with frontier technology on the first go round. So I do think there's a bit of an advantage there, and we see better outcomes, I think, at least in the enterprise with that slightly more experienced archetype.
And or partnering with system integrators, management consultants, and some of those organizations are making billions in consulting revenue. And I've partnered with them on events, so I can see that happening.
Are you still seeing that's happening? Because I feel like in the beginning
Yes.
of it, and Accenture of the world is actually making the most bucks of this. But also, I feel like that was a phase, like a lot of people trying to figure out how to use AI, and so they need some advice or expertise from the consultancies. And now I'm seeing a lot of the, at least like startups trying to sell directly to enterprises. So I'm curious what you're seeing.
Yes, but to Patrick's point, which I agree with, like people, forward deployed engineers or management consultants still need to be embedded in the business and understand that. And so that's key. I think there's a bigger trend here that I want to just highlight. So we all know what an org chart is, but there's a new meme that's emerging. I can see it happening called a work chart, where an organization, an enterprise, just plots out the business goals, and then you figure out what's going to complete it. And it doesn't matter if it's a human, AI, or agent. And so to have an enterprise transform their thinking that the workers are not human, that still requires all these education and petting people and making them feel like they're not going to get fired, right? So I think there's a lot to happen. And I think that's what the MIT report was touching upon, that there was still resistance within the organization culturally. So that's why I believe the management consultants still have a key role to play here.
I want to do a little bit of a survey of what you're seeing on AI impacts on like job placement in both of your startups and the enterprises your startup is trying to sell to. I think, Jeremiah, you mentioned like you're backing a company with maybe 20 employees
30.
and 30
and 300. So almost everybody at the company is mid-level, but they have 10 AI agents. I think that's the key thing. There's very few junior people, and we're seeing the news, right, saying that junior people or people right out of college are struggling to get employed. And we're seeing reports that mid-level and senior level software engineers that are using AI have the most benefit, and the entry level are struggling. So I think that is a trend that we need to track. But the question is, and I'd love to hear from the panelists, will that go upstream? Will you need mid-level workers if AI and agentic and AGI can happen? I don't know.
My sense is AI will make every persona, especially white-collar workers, 30 to 80% more effective, more productive, if I had to guess. And I'd also guess that the workplace is still going to be very competitive. In other words, what I'm seeing with startups is that some people predicted instead of raising $5 million, you may only have to raise 1 or 2. It's not what happens, right? Instead of raising 5, you raise 5. Instead of raising 10, you raise 10. In fact, you might raise more because the opportunity is bigger. You're just expected to do more. Like the world just gets more productive, and you use those resources differently. So I sort of predict that's going to happen, which is, and it's not to say there won't be displacement along the way or changing of roles, moving to higher order work. There will be some change. We know that. It's already happening. But I do think in general, this is about productivity. I had just a really lame sort of like insight this weekend. I was doing my laundry. You put it in, and I spent an hour and a half doing something else, and I came back, right? Now you can do that with ChatGPT. I can make it do some project. It spends now 15 minutes. I come back, it's done. It's the same thing happening, but I still have to drive my daughter around during that hour and a half and take her here or there. So I'm still doing things that are productive. That's what's happening in the world right now.
Yeah, and kind of related to that, I actually want to hear your thoughts on the fundraising trends in the early stage. I think in the early days of AI development, we have seen a lot of like the large fundraising to support some of the compute and the infrastructure cost, is even for early stage companies. Is that still happening from where you're seeing, or that trend has largely shifted away?
I would say there's probably less appetite to fund kind of foundation model companies, unless like you're one of the 7 or 8 that are out there today. Broader fundraising market, it's never been an easier time, I think, to raise money. There's never been more aggressive capital in the market, though I do think like if you're not selling AI, you're not selling. If you're not building AI, you're not raising any money.
Yeah, I would agree with that comment. And this panel was titled 0 to 1. It should have been titled like 0 to 3 or 0 to 5 because that's the shift in expectations. And it's different, I think, consumer, where it's more about adoption, traction. But if you're selling to a business, you can't raise an A unless you're really getting to 3 to 5 million ARR and getting there fast. And that's an extreme. There's always exceptions. But the point is, these markets are so big and the pull is so strong. And there are companies that are going 0 to 5 very, very quickly. And so if you're not, that's kind of the expectation, the question.
Yeah, so Signal Fire did a report that 50% of funding is in the Bay Area, so that's why founders are coming here. This is the place to do it. So just some numbers that I'm seeing: pre-seed, inception, they're raising 1 to 2 mil, and then seed, I'm seeing they're raising 3 to 5. I'd love to hear your perspective. And then if you get to an A, sometimes there's seed plus. If you get to an A, I'm seeing the good ones are raising 15 to 20 at a 100M valuation, but only 20% of companies get to an A. Does that track with you guys? Maybe a little different in the East Coast?
No, I would say same thing, because at least, I mean, we're trying to be early, back founders on campus. But once we've gotten our ownership, we encourage them to come here to raise money when they have traction.
Yeah, you're going to bring them to me, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
I will.
Is that in line with SaaS startups too?
Yeah. My data was mostly SaaS. Like 95% of startups that are getting funded are B2B.
Very helpful. Lightning round, what's the piece of advice you would be giving to founders out today? I know Jeremiah says show up and build your personal brand and go to in-person events, but curious to hear if anyone have else to add.
Well, the advice I typically give founders, just given who we usually talk to, is find your 3 smartest and best friends and just go build something and talk to customers.
Yeah, building off that, talk to customers, talk to customers, talk to customers. It's like by far the most important thing is what the customer thinks, the need they're solving. That's the 0 to 1, is just focus on that.
So we have a slightly different take where we are looking for startups that have business model strategies. So how long does a technical moat last in AI land? It's months. So you need more than that. In fact, I don't know if you, so I actually have a lightning talk on the lawn in like 5 minutes, where I'm going to talk about the business strategies that you need in AI to go over there. I'm totally pitching my next thing. So if you want to check that out, I'm heading there. I'm running out the door to go to the lawn.
I wish we had more time to discuss that foundation models, but and the business strategies. But I already got an idea for the next book title, which should be From 0 to 3.
I like it.
Yeah.
Why not 0 to 10?
Yeah.
10x.
Thank you again, Fraser, Jeremiah, and Patrick, for the great panel.